Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from downtown Baton Rouge. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from our studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Got Jacob Beck, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos and fired up to be here. We got a lot to cover over the next couple of hours. Of course, LSU wins. The Saints get embarrassed. LSU's got its three annual opponents for the next 4 years in football. I have a conversation with our friends over at Auction a little bit later on this hour. My SEC picks against the spread. Denton Day talking college football. Bruce Pearl just made breaking news. There's just, as generally the case on Mondays, there's a lot to get to. So let's crank it up the way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
LSU wins over Southeastern back on Saturday night. 56-10 was the final. Y'all understand the way I feel about these games. They are great for fans that want to go tailgate. They are great if you want to bring your kiddo to his or her first game. They are great if you don't want to deal with traffic. They are great if you're an LSU coaching staff that wants to rest guys with injuries. They're not great to analyze in this chair 2 days later. There's just not a lot of meat on that bone. So, to me, the story from Saturday night was really singular for LSU. The story on Saturday night was just from the eye test alone. Garrett Nussmeier looked pretty healthy. And I don't care about the statistics. I don't care about how many touchdowns LSU scored while he was on the field. I don't care about how many receivers you threw the ball to or any of those things. It's just not really relevant for a guy who threw for 4,000 yards last year, is a fifth-year senior. Like, that stuff is immaterial against Southeastern. What is not is the fact that he did take a deep shot to Chris Hilton into the end zone. Now, there was pass interference. I didn't connect on it, but he showed that he could get it out there. In the touchdown pass, he threw to Xavier Thomas, where he dropped back. There was pass rush. He spun out, rolled to the left, flipped his hips, threw across his body on the run on a line to the back of the end zone. It was about a 30-yard throw. That was awesome. And as I wrote in my column for LouisianaSports.net, like, that throw, just the mechanics of it and the velocity on the football is the same against the Southeastern Lions as it is against the Detroit Lions. Like, it is what it is. You're either healthy enough and have a strong enough arm to do it, or you're not. And Garrett Nussmeier did that on Saturday. To me, he looked like he was ready to go. He looked like a guy who was not limited. And that's really all I was interested in seeing on Saturday night. So to me, you've got a quarterback that looks healthy. And I want to be clear about this. I believe that LSU's identity as a football team this year is already essentially established. There will certainly be games where they play better. There will be games where they don't play as well. That's just the nature of a football season. But this is going to be a team that has a strong defense. How strong it is to be determined. But it has a strong defense that it will lean on to win games. It has a veteran quarterback who's got a lot of arm talent and a lot of production in his recent past. And it's got a running game that is not up to standard. That is the identity of this team. That is not to suggest that they can't come out in November and run the ball well on somebody on a given Saturday. Block it up pretty nicely, break a couple of tackles, hit a couple of big plays, and all of a sudden you've got a really nice day at the office. But I think to suggest that this team is going to go from not really being able to push Louisiana Tech around in week 2 to a dominant running team in week 10, that's probably not going to happen. So because of that, how far LSU goes, in my opinion, is going to come on the back of that defense and that quarterback. That's the team. That's the backbone. That's the identity. And I thought on Saturday, just regardless of competition, I've made it abundantly clear what I think about LSU's competition on Saturday night. Regardless of competition, you have a quarterback that is healthy enough to play. So all last week, you heard me say, don't play, and I wouldn't have played him. But I think I can now start to connect some dots here that at least make sense to me. Doesn't mean I'm going to have any news here, but these dots make sense to me. He didn't throw at the middle of August, end of August, when we were out there. That's because he was hurt. LSU didn't throw the ball down the field very much at all, and he was inaccurate for the first 3 weeks of the season because he was hurt. LSU did not say anything about the injury because they didn't want the other teams to know he was hurt when he was hurt. LSU mentioned something about the injury when the injury was in the rearview mirror, and it didn't matter that teams now knew that there was an injury in August because he had recovered from the injury. And whether or not Southeastern knew he was hurt or not didn't matter because they couldn't do anything about it because it's a different sport they play. But Ole Miss certainly could, and by the time LSU gets to Ole Miss, you've got a healthy quarterback. That's why the timing of the announcement came last week. I think those dots are reasonable to connect to me. So for me, I think Garrett Nussmeier's healthy. I think he's ready to go, and I think that gives LSU its best team going forward, and really its only chance moving forward, because if he is compromised in any significant way, this LSU football team cannot reach its potential. He is that important to this team. So that is far and away the lead to Saturday night's game, and I don't know that there's a close second story. I'll mention a couple of things that we talked about in the post-game show and that I think are worth noting. Michael Van Buren played in the game for his first action as a Tiger, and I thought he played nicely. He was 10 for 12 for 122 yards, threw a touchdown pass, ran for a touchdown as well. This is less about the competition and more about just what he did when he was out there, because we watched Michael Van Buren play a lot in practice in August, and it wasn't very good. Like, he just didn't have good practices when we were out there. We didn't see every practice. We didn't see every rep. But we saw a lot of inaccurate throws. We saw the ball being turned over. We saw Joe Sloan chastising missed reads. Like, we saw a lot of negatives with Michael Van Buren at practice. And what you saw on Saturday night was a guy who looked comfortable, who threw the ball very accurately. He was 10 of 12, and one was a drop. So, I mean, he was on target 11 of his 12 throws, which, you have bigger windows to throw to against Southeastern than you do against, Oklahoma. But he made the throws, and I thought looked very comfortable. A backup quarterback this day and age in college football, you can't hope for too much because a lot of backups that aren't playing and have been beaten out but are veteran leave. So what you either have is a guy that is a freshman or very inexperienced who's waiting his turn to play but is already in the program, or you've got a guy that's generally speaking not as talented, that's not frustrated by not being a starter and leaving. So most teams are not going to have a very good backup quarterback at the top of the sport in college football. That's just the era that we're in. And so what your baseline is for a backup quarterback is now like, can you get someone in there that can function for a little bit if your starting quarterback misses a little bit of time? I would suggest that most teams around the country, you lose your starting quarterback for 8 games, it could be some trouble. And we'll talk a lot about backup quarterback with Ole Miss this weekend because Trinidad Chambliss is playing very well, and he may be blowing this point that I'm making up, but I think I'm speaking in general terms, and I think it's probably well-founded. You're not going to have, in many cases, a backup quarterback that can come in and play as well as the starting quarterback. But can you come in and hold the rope? And what Michael Van Buren did on Saturday was get some experience in this offense that he has never played in before and gain some confidence, and probably showed his coaching staff some of the things that he's comfortable with should LSU need to lean on him for 3 possessions in this game, 2 possessions in this game, 1 game against this team. I think that was good. I think it was a positive. Offensive line-wise, it was the biggest story on my Twitter feed. It was the biggest story on my text messages during this game in the stadium. There are some issues on the right side of the offensive line. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. Brian Kelly was asked today about Weston Davis, said he's done a really nice job. Said that he's a young player and that that job is not up for grabs. There's not a competition at right tackle right now. G.J. Chester is the second team right tackle, and they'll get Carius Kern up to speed as quickly as they can. But Weston Davis is the guy. And right now, like I go to the Pro Football Focus grades every Sunday and put a story up on LouisianaSports.net. Like, He's been in the bottom 5 in every game. The grades are not very good. The eye test is not very good. He's got to play better, and that's very, very obvious. Here's what I would say about Weston Davis today. I've been out to practice. I've been very close to Weston Davis at practice. There is not an offensive lineman in college football that looks the part more than Weston Davis. He is all of 6'6". His arms go for an hour and a half. He's got a small waist, and he's got quick feet, and he's got every bit of ability and the tangibles that you could possibly want. He's also a redshirt freshman who did not start a game last year. So you're at the bottom of his development right now. What the top is, I don't know. And how quickly he can get to the top, I don't know either. But they need to see some improvement from him. The good news is he's got the ability to improve, and he's young in his career. It's not like you're talking about a guy who's been the same for 3 years. He's been in this program for a year and a half now. So I think everyone's aware, just watching, that things have got to be a little bit better at right tackle. But you've got a guy there that has the tools. He's just got to develop, and that's up to Brad Davis and this coaching staff to get him to play a little bit better than he has through the first month of the season. I think those were the biggest talking points. Injury updates did come today. We'll talk about those a little bit later on in the show for those that missed it. Trey Green, we saw pregame in a knee brace, running around, jumping, making catches. He looked great. They just held him out for one more week. He's going to play this week against Ole Miss, so that's good news. West Weeks ran yesterday with that calf strain. They said he ran up to 90%. They listed him as probable today, so very likely that he plays in the game against Ole Miss. Then you've got Caden Durham and Gabriel Relaford, who were hurt in the game on Saturday. Caden Durham's got an ankle issue, not a high ankle sprain. They're going to have him day-to-day. We'll get updates on him on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday with the availability reports. We'll see. It sounds like it is an ankle injury that could cost him a week or two. It sounds like that. Then you got Gabriel Relaford, who had a shoulder injury. He was in a sling back on Saturday, and he had a shoulder injury that I have never heard of before, subluxation. I don't know what that is. I'm not a doctor, but we have a doctor coming on here in 30 minutes that can talk about it. He is going to get further evaluation. There's a possibility he can play through it. There's a possibility he would need to have surgery that would cost him a lot of time, potentially the entirety of the season. We just don't have that information yet. So Gabriel Relaford, the most significant of those injuries with the shoulder, they're going to get further information this week and determine a course of action for him. So that's a look at your injuries. That's a look at the storylines from Saturday night. And then we kind of put LSU and Southeastern to bed. I don't think there's a lot worth getting into in that game, as LSU wins it by 46 points and scored touchdowns on 8 straight drives at one point on Saturday night. That's your opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge. When we come back, let's talk about the Saints, shall we? I didn't like one of Kellen Moore's quotes. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Get behind the wheel of the GV80. Mid-sized SUV. It's always been my preference in vehicle. If you've got a family and you're looking for a new ride, Genesis GV80 is an awesome option for you. It's an IAHA top safety pick, and it's going to come with America's best warranty, which we tell you about every single day. 10 years, 100,000 miles on your powertrain warranty. 5 years, 60,000 miles on your bumper-to-bumper new vehicle warranty. Got enhanced 24/7 roadside assistance, complimentary valet scheduled maintenance for 3 years, 36,000 miles. All those perks, an unbelievable vehicle, and a great team to work with over at Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can stop by Airline at PQ, or you can check out that inventory at GenesisofBatonRouge.com, GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Who LSU will play annually for the next 4 years in football. We'll talk about that in the segment that is coming up. Denton Day in an hour and 15 minutes with your national college football storylines. Also got to get to my SEC picks against the spread. Talk about the weekend that was in the Southeastern Conference in football. So lots to get to here. Appreciate you kicking off your week with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Denton Didn't go so well up in the Pacific Northwest for the Black and Gold on Sunday evening. 44-13 was the final. And before I get into these talking points, like, big picture, it's not very significant. Like, the fact the Saints got smoked by the Seahawks on the road, it doesn't really change my outlook for the future of the organization. It was ugly. You don't see games like that in the NFL very often. But I think everyone in August was aware that there may be a Sunday here or there for the Saints that looks like that. You were picked at the bottom of the league by everybody. ESPN, The Athletic, Yahoo, Vegas, whoever. Saints, 28th, 29th, 30th. You were one of the worst teams in the league by everyone in August. So to get smoked on the road is not shocking. Watching it unfold that way by giving up a punt return touchdown and then having a punt blocked and just getting annihilated, like, it was jarring in the moment. But when you take a step back and realize, okay, this is what you're working with, like, I don't think differently about the 2026, 2027 Saints based on what I saw on Sunday for 4 quarters. They just got their butt kicked because they're not very good. So with that understanding, there were a couple of things that irked me more so than what I saw in weeks 1 and 2 where you didn't win games. And my hope is that it's not something that shows back up in the future, that it was more of like a one-time thing. But I can't just let it go because it irked me in a major way. To trail by 30 points in the first half and have a 4th and 2 and instead line up for a longer than 50-yard field goal while you're down 30 is ridiculous. Ridiculous. And even worse, to get down inside the 10-yard line when you are trailing 38-3 in an NFL football game and to attempt a field goal is ridiculous. Now, Kellen Moore was asked why he kicked that field goal, and I will let him give his thoughts before I go further with mine. But again, I thought it was ridiculous. Here's Kellen Moore on the decision, down by 35 points at nearly halftime of an NFL game, to kick a chip shot field goal instead of trying to throw the ball in the end zone.
I feel like we just need to earn some points out of that drive. And we got some points, and we'll see if we can stop them and get ourselves at least in a position where, you got to play the game perfect to have a chance. But we just need to get something going.
Huh? You think that by going into the locker room down 38-6, you've now given yourself a significantly better chance to win the football game? Huh? This is what, when I heard that quote yesterday, this is the thought I had. Everyone leans from their experiences, right? And to me, this is what it sounded like to me. It sounded like when my 3-year-old has a soccer game and we let the parents go out there and hold the players' hands so they're not scared to be on the field so that everybody feels better. It sounded to me like, well, we just need to get some points there just because it might make you feel better. It might make the players feel better. What? It's 38-3, Kellen. You need to score a touchdown, and you're inside the 10-yard line. This is not a situation where you're on the 37 and you're probably not going to score a Hail Mary. You're inside the 10. That field goal was a loser move. It was a loser move to kick a chip shot field goal before the halftime. I don't have another way to say it. I do not believe that decision is a harbinger for a disastrous tenure with Kellen Moore as the head coach of the Saints. I do not. I think the decision to kick that field goal before the half was utterly ridiculous. You have to try to score a touchdown when you're down 38-3. We have a small sample size with Kellen Moore as the head coach. And the wins and losses to me are not that significant. But I got to tell you, in week 1, to not call those timeouts before the half was troubling. And his answer after that was troubling. And in week 3, to go for that field goal and to do it twice when you're getting the doors blown off is troubling. I think it's more important that Kellen Moore knows how to dial up an offense and develop a quarterback and make sure he hires good coaches. That part is far more important than these little things that I'm talking about in games that are ultimately going to be meaningless because the Saints stink this year and their wins and losses don't matter. So this is not something that I think is going to destroy the organization from within. It's just troubling. Like these decisions are bad. It was a bad decision in the first game to not call those timeouts. It was a bad decision to line up for either of those field goals. You're getting smoked. You got to go score touchdowns. And nobody in that locker room, nobody is going to feel any better because you cut the lead from 38-3 to 38-6 right before the half. It's embarrassing. It's an embarrassment. There are bigger issues with this organization than these things that I'm pointing out right now. But I don't have 3 years of sample size with Kellen Moore to lean on. I'm learning about him every single Sunday. And some of these decisions in his first time as a head coach are absolutely troubling. But we'll see. The whole thing with this season is be better in December than you were in September. And they're setting a pretty low bar in September right now. So with development, and if that comes, I would love to sit here and laud it and talk positively about it. I would love to do that. But right now, like, I'm not going to get on here on Monday after a professional football team gets annihilated like that and try to start nitpicking positives from Sunday. There aren't any. Quincy Riley got out there, forced a turnover. Tyler Shuck got his feet wet, down 100 in the fourth quarter. Like, I mean, that would be a ridiculous thing to start talking about. There really isn't any positive. And I would suggest, as I started this segment by saying, like, there's not anything that I'm seeing that is just a complete harbinger of doom for the Saints. They're in a bad spot right now with the roster, and everybody's just got to do the best that they can. But also, I'm willing to sit here and tell you that those decisions that Kellen Moore has made, I don't like. So you flush that one, and then you're going to get smoked on Sunday in Buffalo. You're 16.5-point dog, which is just unfathomable in the NFL. And then you got to come home and play some of your best football, the best football that you're capable of playing against the Giants and the Patriots, who are not very good. Because we talked about how important that game against a backup quarterback in San Francisco might have been, because these start to pile up. These guys are pros. They're going to come in and go to work. But that negative energy is hard to get out. And you can live with having a play and a throw into the end zone in weeks 1 and 2 to win and not getting it done. Like, that happens. You look up and it's 38-3. You give up 21 points in the first quarter. It's the first time the Seahawks have done that since 2006. Worst halftime deficit ever in the like. That's a bad deal. That was a bad effort on Sunday. It was a bad game, and you just got to get on past it. You just wish that next up wasn't a trip to Buffalo, because that doesn't exactly warm the heart if you're trying to be optimistic. I hated Kellen Moore's answers, and I hated those decisions. Those are what irked me the most. And I don't know that there's a lot else to talk about from Sunday. It was just a disaster for New Orleans. We'll see. We'll talk to Sharif and a few other guests as we move on this week with the black and gold. All right. Got a lot to do here on this Monday. We'll transition back into some more positive discussions. Let's talk about who LSU is playing in football annually, not permanently, annually over the next 4 seasons. LSU got those, well, the word leaked from the SEC. Talk about that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. Just an awesome spot for whatever you're looking to get out of golf. And it's climate controlled, which is a beautiful thing. 3 wonderfully furnished, comfortable, spacious bays that you can go into, either work on your game on the driving range mode, where you hit into the simulator. They've got amazing technology there that shows you the flight of your ball, so you can get that feedback. But it also gives you the data that you're looking for with your swing speed, club head speed, ball speed, spin, hang time, all, the All those things that you're looking for are so helpful. And one of the things that I found was most helpful was seeing the video of your club at impact, where you're catching the ball on the club face. If you're looking to work on your game, no matter your skill level, you can do that at Swing Easy Golf Club. You're thinking, hey, I don't really want to do that, but I'd love to drink a couple of beers and put Pebble Beach on the simulator, see what I look like on a U.S. Open course. You can do that as well with some friends, hang out, watch TV, great furniture, and awesome setting for golf, no matter if it's raining, 100 degrees, gets dark early, no matter what, because you're inside at Swing Easy Golf Club. They're on Segan at Perkins. You can check them out online, swingeasygcbr.com, but I invite you to just go by and see them on Segan at Perkins. It's Swing Easy Golf Club here in Baton Rouge.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
I want to remind you about LouisianaSports.net. Always free to read our content, LSU news and opinion, Saints news and opinion, SEC news and opinion as well. Bruce Pearl deciding to retire. That's up there on LouisianaSports.net right now. Also, I want to toss this out because I feel like I answered this question twice over the weekend. So if two people this weekend asked me about it, I feel like there might be other people that are curious as well. We understand that at times on terrestrial radio, the signal is sometimes it's stronger than others. If you're listening to us on 104.5 ESPN and it's a little bit scratchy, 104.9 is always an option as well. So for those this was big news when we acquired that stick and we simulcast those two, but we haven't really publicized it in a few years because it's kind of old news to us. But reminder, 104.5 and 104.9 are both simulcasting at once, and you can check out both. If the signal's better on one or the other, then stick there. If you're looking for a little bit better, maybe you can switch it over. So I got that question twice about the signal over the weekend, so I figured I would toss that out here, 105 and 104.9. I am stunned that the Southeastern Conference leaked the 3 opponents for every SEC team before their made-for-TV special tomorrow. Chris Lowe, who's a wonderful reporter, a longtime reporter who's covered the SEC for decades, put out his stories with On 3 now and had all 16 teams, all 3. And I'm comfortable suggesting that he's got that right. Billy Lucci over at TexAgs was reporting who A&M's 3 were. I know that there were some that knew who LSU's were around here. And so every school had been alerted. And so that information was out there. I was just stunned that somebody was allowed to get all of it. And so either way, we've got it now, and you can react to it. If you were listening to Off the Bench this morning, Hester and Flynn were not in good moods at all. And Hester suggested there's maybe some people on the dial a little bit later on in the day that would be thrilled with the news. I don't know that I would put myself exactly in that camp, because here's my take on the situation with the, I want to say permanent because that's what we always used. It's annual. And keep in mind, this is just for 4-year cycles. So in 4 years, you're going to reevaluate this, and you're going to play everybody in the league every other year. And these are only 3 of your 9 league games. There are 6 other games. So as much as you want to create some level playing field here, you realize that there's going to be a lot of variables on every other schedule because there are 6 other games. This is only a third of your league schedule. So I'm not here to rant and rave and jump up and down and cuss over who got who and who got what. I am here to react to what LSU got. And it's, for those that aren't aware, it's Ole Miss, it's Texas A&M, and it is Arkansas. And I think if you're just going to judge this in a vacuum, that is a favorable draw in terms of strength of schedule for LSU. Arkansas is in a terrible place with its football program. You've got an athletic director who is suggesting that the department is not set up to succeed in football. You've got a lame duck coach who's going to be fired. There's not very much talent. There's not a lot of interest. Like, it's just Arkansas is in a terrible spot as far as this football program. And so you would imagine over the next 4 years, it's not going to wildly change. And then for your tougher two draws, you've got Ole Miss and Texas A&M. Lane Kiffin has created a very, very strong program at Ole Miss. The Rebels have won 10 games in 3 of the last 4 years. He has not finished with a losing SEC record since 2020, the COVID year, which was his first year on the job. He's built Ole Miss into an upper-level SEC football program if you're just looking at wins and losses over the last 4 years. No question. So you figure there's a reasonable chance he'll be there for the next 4 years. He might go to Gainesville this year. I don't know. But if he's there for the next 4 years, like, Ole Miss is going to be pretty good. They're going to have a good offense, they'll have a good quarterback. And depending on how much the boosters are willing to pay in NIL, like, they'll probably have a pretty good team. But Ole Miss also has never played for the SEC championship. And there are 8 schools in this 16-team SEC that have won a national championship since 1998, and Ole Miss is not one of them. So from that perspective, it's not Georgia, it's not Texas, it's not Alabama. It's Ole Miss, who's been good, but not any sort of juggernaut. And then you've got Texas A&M, who fits in that same mold as Ole Miss from never played for the SEC championship. They've been in the league now for 12 years, never played for it. They have not won a national championship. They haven't won a conference title since 1998. I think Mike Elko is a good coach. I think they'll have good defenses. They're recruiting very well. Are they a disaster? No, they're not. And would a lot of people suggest their arrow is pointing up? Sure, they got a big win last week. So while Ole Miss and Texas A&M feel like strong opponents, they're not Georgia. They're not what Texas is in terms of recruiting, and Texas has been in the playoff. They're not what Alabama can be. So if you're just looking at it from strength of schedule, which is my number one, criteria here for who I'd like to play, like, it's not the toughest draw you could get. It's not a cakewalk. It's not the toughest draw you could get. But as I said at the beginning, like, yes, you will play Arkansas the next 4 years. And I would suggest there's a good chance you could go 4-0 there. But on top of Ole Miss and Texas A&M, like, you're probably playing Georgia next year. Might play Texas next year. Might play Bama next year. You got Clemson on the schedule next year. So, like, it's not, this is just 3 of the 12 games. It's 3 of the 9 league games. So I don't have I thought when I looked at the teams and I looked at who everybody drew, I thought that's pretty equitable. And that's what I saw pretty much across the board from everybody. Now, Tennessee gets Kentucky and Vanderbilt. That's a nice draw. They catch Alabama, but Kentucky and Vanderbilt. But again, they're going to play LSU, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma as well at some point in the next 4 years. So I'm not going nuts here. I'm not losing my mind because LSU is not playing Florida this next year, potentially. Florida's not a permanent, an annual. I didn't lose my mind when LSU didn't play Auburn this year. Because guess what? The trip to Norman, to me, is big football games. Big deal. And just because they wear crimson and cream instead of orange and blue, like Auburn or Florida, I guess, like, that doesn't make me less jacked up. I'm just as fired up for Texas to come out of the Tiger Stadium tunnel than I am if it was Georgia or Auburn. I realize there's more history with LSU and Auburn, but in terms of the environment, the setting, the brands, the impact on the season, like, all those things, like, there's just a lot of really good games in the SEC. Now, you would have heard me throw a fit here, yes, if you would have gotten LSU and Texas and Georgia. If you had gotten Alabama, Texas, and Georgia, if those were your 3. Because that's just, it's just going to be very difficult to navigate that. And strength of schedule matters immensely in college football. It's not that big a deal in the NFL. Like, it is. There are first place schedules and last place schedules, and there are division crossovers and those types of things. But, like, it's 30 teams on a level playing field. This is 16 teams, and it's not a level playing field. Kentucky is just not Bama. Vandy is just not Texas. So strength of schedule matters. And the reason that Indiana got in the playoff last year is not because they were great at football. It's because they played an easy schedule. If South Carolina had played Indiana's schedule, they'd have been in. So it's a big deal how hard your schedule is. But assigning every school 3 opponents does not suggest what the strength of schedule ultimately is going to be. And I know that Matt and Jake this morning were just mortified that Florida wasn't a permanent opponent, that Bama wasn't a permanent opponent. They may be on the schedule next year. In fact, I bet one of them is. We just don't know. And I'll tell you this, like, you need a couple of games in your conference slate that you can win by 3 scores. It's more fun to get amped up and jacked up and fired up to play Florida, and Bama, and Texas, Georgia, and all that. But if you put the toughest 8 games on your toughest 9 games, I guess now at this point, toughest 9 games on your schedule, yeah, those Saturdays be fun. You'll get the emotions going. You're also probably not going to the playoff. So you got to kind of decide what's the most important thing. Is it testing your manhood every single Saturday, or is it making sure you're in the playoff? You can't make sure of that, but it's just something that you've got to consider. And to me, I like to get in the playoff. I like Indiana's route from last year more than I like South Carolina's. So we'll see what the entire schedule is. I realize it's a lukewarm take from me to not go rant and rave and hoot and hollering, but this is just 3 games. And I think for LSU, it's fairly favorable because you don't have a true blue blood in that 3. But guess what? There will be 3 blue bloods on that schedule when it comes out for next fall. Just a matter of when and where, because you can't avoid them all in the SEC. So that's a look at LSU's permanent opponents. If you're looking for everybody's, you can find it over at louisianasports.net. We got all your coverage there for free. Plenty to do in hour number 2. SEC picks against the spread. Some more LSU football discussion. We'll talk some injuries as well as Denton Day, national college football storylines. Bruce Pearl also steps away. We got to get into that as well. When we come back, let's talk some injuries. LSU had 4 that were updated, and then also Joe Burrow out for a significant amount of time. Bengals looked atrocious. We'll do that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Have you explored a captive? Something that Jonathan wants me to harp on because it's something that they're proud of over at the Highland Insurance Group. They can handle captive insurance programs. And if you're a sizable business that has a big expenditure annually for insurance, has great loss history, great risk management, and want to change your bottom line, a captive may be exactly what you want. And if your broker has not presented that to you, maybe your broker is not capable. Maybe they don't have those relationships and that capability inside their balls. Well, the Highland Insurance Group does. They handle captives every single day. So if you're looking for an alternative that may change your bottom line drastically when it comes to your insurance, call the Highland Insurance Group. Say, hey, Jonathan, heard Hunt talking about captives. Let's have a meeting. He would love to do that and chat with you. They handle them every single day. It's the Highland Insurance Group. They're based here in Baton Rouge. Can help you out statewide. HighlandIG.com. HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Hour number 1 here, Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Time now for Sports Health, presented by Ochsner Andrews Sports Medicine Institute. Got a lot to talk about. It's our pleasure to welcome to the show Dr. Julie Newman, who specializes in orthopedic surgery at Ochsner Health with a particular interest in sports medicine and disorders of the foot and ankle. She joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Dr. Newman, thanks for the time. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Hon, for having me.
It is our pleasure. Unfortunately, Sundays have not been super pleasant down here in South Louisiana. The Saints are not playing very well. Generally, we have an option to go watch Joe Burrow play if the Saints aren't playing very well, but we're not right now because he's down with turf toe injury. I don't even know what turf toe is. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, I can, certainly. So turf toe is a very common injury. It's actually most common in football. So whenever an athlete hyperextends his or her big toe, they will tear the ligaments and capsules on the undersurface of the big toe. And even though it sounds like it's not a very big injury, it's a really big deal because you need your big toe to have push-off strength.
No question. Joe's a super tough guy, and he's played through a lot of pain in his time at LSU and with the Bengals. This is going to cost him a couple of months. What's that rehab and return like? Is it a deal where you just need to rest, or is there any way that he can get back more quickly?
Yeah, so the way that turf toe works, it's graded 1 to 3. So grade 1 is just a stretch injury. Grade 2 is a partial tear of the ligaments of the structures that are injured. And then grade 3 is a complete tear of the ligaments and capsules on the undersurface of the toe. Grade 3 sometimes will require surgery. And unfortunately, Joe has a grade 3 tear. So rehab for that is a bit more lengthy than it would be if he were to have a grade 1 or 2. A lot of times recovery, we don't see athletes coming back to sport for oftentimes 4 to 6 months from surgery.
Well, if yesterday was any indication, the Bengals are in big trouble without Joe Burrow. They were destroyed by the Vikings in Minnesota. When we speak about some things going on with LSU, obviously we don't speak in specifics and specific cases, but because of your specialty with foot and ankle, LSU does have some issues with ankles. And one of the things we've heard Brian Kelly talk about is the high ankle sprain versus not a high ankle sprain. Can you kind of give us an indication of what the difference is between those two injuries?
Yes. So when people talk about an ankle sprain, they're typically referring to a low ankle sprain, which is an inversion type injury. So the recovery from that ranges from about 4 to 6 weeks. A high ankle sprain is a different mechanism. So the foot actually will turn outwards, and the injury is higher up than your typical ankle sprain that we talk about on a day-to-day basis. The injury recovery from a high ankle sprain is a bit longer. On average, it's taking about 13 weeks or so for people who are treated non-operatively to return to sports. And then when you add operative intervention for the more severe injuries or the more unstable injuries, the recovery could be even longer.
So the two of the guys that have ankle issues for LSU are running back Caden Durham and then center Braylon Moore. They do obviously very, very different things on the field. When you speak about returning to action and guys playing in the mobility that may or may not be there, like I'm assuming when you talk about playing on the offensive line, you can do that a little bit more quickly than cutting as a running back. Does that sound right on that ankle injury?
That sounds right, yes.
That's kind of what I thought. So we'll see how those two guys progress. Braylon Moore obviously played over the weekend, and Caden Durham is day-to-day with that injury moving forward. Dr. Newman, we really appreciate some time. Thanks so much, and have a great week.
All right, Hunt, you as well.
Dr. Julie Newman with Ochsner. I want to remind you that at Ochsner Andrews Orthopedic Sports Medicine Institute, we know that sports injuries can be unpredictable, but one situation you can protect yourself from is heat illness. I know that it is technically fall. The highs are still in the 90s. Not time to drop your guard as far as heat illnesses go. Some key signs to look out for include excessive sweating, dry mouth, dizziness, fast heart rate, or change in a mental status. Feel any of these symptoms, stop physical activity immediately and find a place to cool off and replenish fluids. To learn more about sports industry prevention and treatment, visit ochsner.org/BRortho. And always great to remind you about the folks over at Ochsner and Elite, which they've got. They can accept walk-ins even on the weekends if you do have an injury, whether youth athletics or just someone in middle age that has something that may come up on the weekend. So appreciate Dr. Newman for giving us a little bit of time. I'm super bummed out about Burrow and then about the Bengals. I mean, if you watched the game yesterday, like Jake Browning just completely overmatched. Vikings scored a couple of defensive touchdowns by the same player, which never happens. And they were just annihilated from start to finish. I was driving around yesterday doing some errands, and we carried the Bengals game yesterday, and I popped it on and heard the score and went, whoa. So that's just another year of Joe and Jamar wasted, which is a bummer, because if what we saw yesterday from the Bengals is any indication of what that's going to look like moving forward, they've got no shot. And it's disappointing because it really shows you the state of that organization when Burrow is not in the middle of it. And it's not like, I mean, the Vikings are playing with Carson Wentz out there and dicing them up. So Joe is propping up an entire organization, it feels like, with his right arm and his legs. And when he's not out there, it just crumbles. And it's disappointing that when they struck gold with this draft pick, they couldn't surround him with enough to make it work. And I realized they were 2-0 when he went out, but like, you got to be able to put up a fight when he's not out there. And they couldn't even put up a fight. So that's a bummer. I've joked about my Bengals fandom on here time and time again, my Commanders fandom time and time again. No, I don't. It doesn't move the needle at all when those two guys are on the field. I didn't watch any of the Bengals yesterday. I didn't watch any of the Commanders yesterday. My rooting interest is solely based on those two quarterbacks. And when they're not there, it's just gone. And so I was excited at the opportunity for the Bengals to start 2-0 and to maybe make a push when it feels like the Chiefs are kind of abdicating their throne here. I know they won last night, but I don't think anybody's really impressed with what the Chiefs are doing offensively right now. Feels like the AFC is kind of like Bengals, and then you got Bills and Ravens is what it felt like. And you look up and, man, it's I realize that the Broncos are good, the Chargers are playing well, and there are other teams, but you got used to the Bengals kind of being in that mix with Joe and getting into the playoffs, and with the Chiefs kind of taking a step back. Could have been a chance, but this injury is going to derail the entire season. You just heard Dr. Newman talking like he's got the worst grade turf toe you can have with a full tear, and he's not going to be able to come back 6 months potentially. In the offseason at that point. So big bummer for the Bengals to had that happen. It just got exacerbated yesterday when they got annihilated. That's it for hour number one. Open with LSU and Southeastern. Really, my only takeaway there was that Nussmeier looked healthy. Speaking of healthy people, that was great. So talked about that top of the show, and then we discussed the Saints and Kellen Moore's decision to kick two just weak field goals yesterday. So if you want to catch that, Hunt on LSU, Hunt on Saints for all our LSU and Saints-centric content. Also, talked a little bit there about LSU's permanent opponents. You can catch it on LSU as well. When we come back, let's talk about the Saturday in the Southeastern Conference. Also get to some Bruce Pearl. Denton Day, 35 minutes from right now, talking National College Football.
The Hunt Palmer Show.